Rabbi, it's good to have you on the telecast with us. Thanks for joining us from UAE. You're right now in Abu Dhabi. And my first question to you about how Ayodhya is to the Hindus what Temple of Solomon is to Judaism. What do you make of the Ram Temple inauguration that is due to take place?
Well, obviously, it's an enormous event in the life of the whole of Hindu culture, not just religion. In fact, there's an interesting parallel here because both Hinduism and Judaism are not exclusively theologies. They represent civilizations, cultures, heritage, and therefore this mandir is an embodiment of the enormous, great heritage of Hindu tradition. So it's enormously significant.
Absolutely, it is. Do you also feel that Ayodhya is going to emerge as a place for tourists from over the entire globe to visit regardless of what their faith is?
Indeed. I think it's very important that religious shrines should be familiar to people of different faiths and to be able to appreciate the beauty and the profound values that they embody.
Absolutely. Will you also, sir, consider leading a Jewish delegation to visit Ayodhya and promote interfaith communication in the future?
I would be very happy to do so. Today, I'm naturally no longer working for a Jewish organization, nor do I have a congregation of my own, but I serve in interfaith roles globally, and I would be delighted to be part and parcel of such a visit.
What is your understanding as a rabbi of the religion that is Hinduism as one of the world's most ancient religions?
Well, it's of course more than just one particular tradition of an enormous civilization. And part of the problem of the very word Hinduism is a Western attempt to try to encapsulate enormous variety within one term. This is the understanding of spirituality, of the divine, of the way we should live, born out of an enormous richness and wealth of culture of the people who have lived in the Indian subcontinent.
Rabbi Rosen, now we Hindus have a term called Ram Rajya, which has become controversial recently because people mistake it for Hindu imposition. Do you think there is much to learn from Ramayana and the good governance, the morals and ethics that it preaches and practices?
Of course, Ramayana's purpose is precisely to impart values by which people should lead their lives. And it is important for people to treasure their own cultural identity and especially their own spiritual heritage. But at the same time, Hinduism, if we can generalize, and I think we can in this case, teaches a tolerance and an openness towards other traditions that is critically important for cohesive society. Indeed, if I may speak as a Jew, India is one of the few places, and maybe unique in the world, certainly one of the very few places where Jews never experienced anti-Semitism. This reflects the kind of welcoming culture and openness of the Hindu tradition, of its own fundamental religious teachings over the generations.
India is one of the few countries that has not seen anti-Semitism in its history, like you pointed out. What hope of tolerance and interfaith understanding does that send out?
Yes, it's really important. Of course, we live today in a world where there are such pressures on people that very often the most noble aspects of their heritages often get lost because of fears, because of competition, because of threats of various kinds. So this heritage of India, which is something so remarkable, and of course, many other aspects of Hindu tradition are things that the West can learn from. This is another thing that the West can learn, how you can maintain your identity, how you should maintain your religious identity, and at the same time be open and tolerant towards other religious traditions.
India has 1 million Hindus, but also more than 200 million Muslims. Buddhists as well were born over here. Buddhism religion was born over here. What is the hope of interfaith harmony that India represents in a troubled world?
Yes, it's crucial, and of course this particular location of this wonderful mandir is not without its own complexity in terms of that history. So it's really important that it embodies a spirit of tolerance and mutual respect. As I said, I think India has a lot to teach the world, and the Hindu tradition has a lot to teach the world, that this is not only possible, but that this is imperative for our well-being.
There are many people who are constantly prophesizing a Muslim genocide in India, telling the world that Muslims in India are living in fear. We know that is not true. There is no such thing that is taking place. What do you make of your outside view of modern India?
Well, I've had the pleasure and privilege of visiting India many times, so I'm able to see the positive spirit and harmony that exists between different religious communities. I know, of course, that there are places where there have been tensions and where there's even been violence, and I think that is very sad, very tragic, and everything must be done to be able to prevent that. But I have many Indian Muslim friends as well as Hindu friends whose life is flourishing and whose communities are flourishing there, and who themselves would refute any attempt to say that Islam is under siege. So it's like, as I say, I mean, unfortunately, here I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem, and we here are involved at the moment in a conflict. But aside from when there is such conflict, I always say to people, come and see for yourself and see how, at least within Israel, Muslims, Christians, and Jews live together in a very respectful atmosphere. And I think it's really important that people who hear different things about India should have the opportunity to go to India themselves and to see how these communities relate to one another, overwhelmingly in a spirit of mutual respect.
What is your view on Narendra Modi as a global leader?
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm qualified to express opinions about political leaders. I'm not a politician, and I also have never met Mr. Modi, but I know that from many Hindu friends and many great swamis, acharyas who are friends of mine, they have a very positive impression of him. Obviously, as far as India-Israel relations, he's also played a very important role in advancing this. And I hope that maybe part of that outcome might even lead to the ability to be able to serve as a go-between also to the Muslim world. Maybe India could even be an agent of peace here in the Middle East.
Now, a major Hindu temple is about to be inaugurated in Abu Dhabi. Also, are you hopeful of a new understanding of Hinduism rising globally?
Absolutely. I think today we live in a global village that has challenges, but many blessings, and the opportunity to recognize one another's heritages, religious heritages, spiritual traditions is greater than ever before. In fact, there has never, ever in human history been as much interfaith understanding, collaboration, and cooperation as we have today. It's an exponentially growing industry. Of course, very often reading the papers, you wouldn't get that impression, because what sells newspapers and what boosts rating generally are the negative stories, not the positive ones. But there is an increasing positive relationship between religions all the time. I have visited the construction of the mandir in Abu Dhabi. The Swami there has hosted me at it, and I hope to be present at the inauguration when Prime Minister Modi will be there. And I think it's a wonderful thing for the UAE and indeed for the Middle East, and in spreading tolerance and understanding throughout the world.
There are Hindu temples that are also being defaced and attacked all across the world, from US to Europe. Why are some of these people out there trying to create Hinduphobia?
I don't think it's just Hinduphobia. There's Islamophobia, and of course there's anti-Semitism. And in a world, I think there are two things here. One is, in a world where there are more tensions, whether these are political or economic or whatever they may be, people tend to become more insular because they feel threatened. So it's a function of fear. And when people are fearful, their worst nature often comes out, and they're often hostile to things that are different from them and different religious traditions. But I'm not sure that there is as much of this, that there is a great deal more today than there has been in the past. I think there are two factors within this. One is that because our world is so much of a global village, people are interacting in ways they didn't before. So people who have never met members of another religious faith or tradition are encountering them, and most cases they're ignorant. They don't know much about these traditions. That's why interreligious education is so important. And very often this prejudice born out of ignorance and fear comes out. But I think a lot has to do with the fact that the blessing of modern communications is a double-edged sword. Today we can communicate in ways that we never were able to do before, and we are exposed to all kinds of communications that we were never able to be before. And these are not only good things, but also bad things. And therefore, the media, and especially social media, amplifies the negative in a way that wasn't done before and gives the opportunity for negative voices to be heard and for actions to be taken and to be encouraged in a way that wasn't done before. So I think a lot has to do with with a rather brutalization of global culture that is facilitated by modern communications. But I actually don't believe that there is more badness or evil in the world today than in the past. I think that interreligious relations are making our world a better place and educating people more and more about one another. And these events and these broadcasts like your own here, having the opportunity to hear from representatives of other religions, is part and parcel, I think, of that positive education that is the essential tool to combat prejudice, bigotry, and even violence.
Can India lead the world now in organizing interfaith conferences and promoting global harmony?
Well, as you said, there's no shortage of people in India. You have one of the largest, if not the largest population in the world, and therefore these numbers are far greater for many different events that take place in many other parts of the world. Whether in relation to the numbers in India, India has more interfaith and interreligious collaboration elsewhere, I don't know. That's difficult for me to judge or to assess. But certainly it must be one of the richest and most fruitful countries in terms of promoting religious harmony.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.